Yeah, I was really upset I couldn't play as Vincent in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. But what do you know? There's a whole spin-off based exclusively on him. One where you play as Vincent exclusively, all on his own quest, all in the format of a third-person shooter? That's weird. Well, we're talking about Final Fantasy VII Dirge of Cerberus. And, well, I would say this game is forgotten. Or rather, it chooses to be forgotten because, well, it's not well liked at all. Final Fantasy VII Dirge of Cerberus is one part of a trio of games meant to expand the popular universe of Final Fantasy VII, alongside Before Crisis and Crisis Core. Dirge of Cerberus does exactly that, but it's the only game of the three to focus on events after the original game, as well as definitely being the most unique out of them all. As far as I can tell, it's the only shooter-based game in all of Final Fantasy. And that's only because Yoshinori Kitase, producer of the game, really loved first-person shooters. It's that simple. And how did that go? Well, why has it been 20 years and they've never tried a shooter game again? Dirge of Cerberus wasn't well received at all. It was blasted really hard on release. Boring, unfulfilling, weak. Pretty much anything you can think of was said about it. Not even Vincent Valentine could save this game. Speaking of Vincent, the reason he was chosen to lead was, well, I guess they just weren't happy with how underdeveloped he was by the end of Final Fantasy VII. Another reason I think is the far more likely one that's not mentioned is that they're making a shooter game. They're very set on making a shooter game, and that makes Vincent one of the only two characters out of the main cast that could have possibly led. Now all that's left is to go see how bad it really is. And instead of making you go play it yourself, I saved you the hassle and I put myself through it. So enjoy me talking about Final Fantasy VII Dirge of Cerberus. This game begins and it's already in a spiral. Not only is Vincent voiced by Tank Dempsey,
Waffle! Killing zombies made easy in one single step, batteries included. Everything's alright now. Omega and Chaos have returned to the planet.
but I'm so confused. Probably because I haven't seen that Final Fantasy VII movie, but still confused. Vincent is being hunted, and when the elusive hunters finally do catch up to him, she just passes out and they leave. Just like that. Oh hey, it's Kate. I guess Vincent must be a professional at fighting helicopters because in the first few missions, that's all he does. Then the second chapter begins, and this is where we really start to get a bit of exposition and build up. It actually starts to seem pretty cool. We start to see this important looking evil lady doing some evil things. We also meet Shalua, and she's got a cool design, and she's looking for her reason to live. But most of all, we start to learn about the big enemy, Deep Ground. Vincent eventually finds himself face to face with the strange evil lady. She reveals he is in possession of something called the Proto-Materia, whatever the hell that is. And when it seems we might finally get our first big boss fight, she gets cutscened. This is gonna become a problem. Continuing on, Vincent is saved by that cute lady from before, and we start to get bits and pieces about Vincent through these small scenes. It's pretty confusing, but for now, she's Lucrecia Crescent, and Vincent will continue to think about her and see her throughout this whole entire game. And I literally mean the whole entire game. After every single thing he does for the rest of the game, he sees her, and we have to see a cutscene of her. Headquarters are now under attack, and Vincent must defend them. The two from the beginning are back, and this time, she's not taking a nap. Instead, she's instantly revealed to be Shalua's sister, her reason to live, which did bother me a little bit. I don't know why they didn't just say Shalua was looking for her sister. Phrasing them differently makes them seem like two different things, her reason to live and looking for her sister, but they're the same thing. Story-wise, I feel like this is one of the game's first big missed opportunities. It's a missed opportunity to create some mystery, and it kind of just makes Shalua not as important. Considering she literally dies like an hour later, she's literally used to push this midget into the spotlight. Shulk, by the way, to get her on our side. But the other big guy, the one with Shulk, Vincent's got an RPG now. With headquarters defended, Vincent is curious about these dreams, visions, things he keeps seeing. So he goes on a search to the old Shinra Manor to learn more about them. Once there, we see another flashback. This time, it's all about young Vincent. Oh hey, it's K-Sith. Oh hey, it's that guy from the remake. And we never get an answer to what this whole section was for. K-Sith could literally still be down there, stuck in that pipe, probably getting eaten by like a ninja turtle. I don't know. We'll actually never know. Vincent finds this orb of materia which somehow allows a digital version of Lucrecia to talk to him. This is the point where it starts to get really confusing. It's that starting point where a lot of these random show-ups and random scenes just happen without much explanation. Vincent runs into the weird lady yet again, and instead of just fighting her, it's more random bosses. Yay! She sneaks Vincent, rips a hole into his chest to get the proto-materia that it was pretty obvious he had, and before she can finish the job, he is luckily saved by the #1 ninja, Yuffie. It's probably time to actually explain the proto-materia, and that all starts with Chaos and Omega. The game actually explains this really well by using the lifestream as an example. As all souls must return to the planet must do the same and return to the universe. Omega is the being that basically returns the planet to the cosmos, and Chaos helps Omega do just that. Vincent is Chaos, and he has the proto-materia, which this evil big bad boss dude, Weiss, who all of Deep Ground works for, who we haven't seen yet, wants to use to control Omega. In a nutshell, Weiss wants to start the world-ending process early, and he needs this proto-materia Vincent has to control Omega. The rest of the game is pretty much the lead up to that big final battle, but the next notable point is when Shalua sacrifices herself to save Shulk, while Vincent kinda just sits there? My guess is they wanted something sad to happen to give the cast reasons to have a down point. A point where Shulk can grow as a character and Vincent can have a human side with Reeve. And they don't really let Vincent have any proper boss fights, so of course Vincent couldn't just fight him. This is also the point where those random flashbacks seem to want to become a love story. It's already confusing, random, and now the two of them have something going on. I'm honestly caring less and less about this as it goes on further and further. It's really dumb. But hey, at least we're approaching the end of the game. The next few missions are the storm on Midgar as Vincent infiltrates and fights his way to Deep Ground. Soon enough, we're on chapter 10, and oh my god, that's a proper boss fight. It took 10 long chapters to have a proper boss fight. Not one that just feels like a boss level enemy, not one that just hits you, but one that actually is a boss. I wish we could have just fought her the other 2 times we've seen her. She's had 2 other encounters with Vincent that could have easily just been boss fights, but random soldiers, random robots, you know, the usual. Okay. The next boss fight is also really good, against Azul. Yet again, took 10 missions. At least we finally get to see Vincent in Chaos form. And I gotta say, to no one's surprise, it's a really beautiful design. It's just really Did he just get cucked by Dr. Hojo? The same Dr. Hojo? This motherfucker. Nero boss fight! This dude from the remake. And it's actually really good. I would say this is probably the most enjoyable boss fight in the whole game. Finally, the end. Vincent reaches Weiss's chamber in the heart of Deep Ground. And as Weiss awakens, it's revealed he isn't Weiss at all. It's Dr. Hojo, who before death uploaded himself into the network and took over Weiss to try and become Omega himself. That's a twist I actually genuinely didn't see coming. But it is a welcome twist because Vincent can get revenge on him for cucking him. Vincent can't do shit though unless he finds a way to control chaos inside of him. And the only one who can help him achieve this is, of course, Lucrecia. Of course, I'm so tired of this. As Vincent controls chaos, he effortlessly defeats Hojo. But hey, we gotta still face Weiss, who fuses with Nero to become the true form of Omega. Omega transcends past Midgar quickly as he transforms into a beast the size of a country. And as Vincent rises into the sky to face him, the cries of his allies cheer him on. It's a typical Japanese media type of moment. The whole cast backing the main character up, screaming, yelling, "You can do it." It always happens, but come on, it's always so goddamn good. It almost makes me want to forget the rest of the bad up to this point, but no, I'm not gonna do that. I do love this boss fight though, and regardless of the rest of the game, it's at least a satisfying and cool ending. It's badass and it definitely fits with what they were going for at least the image of the game. Plus, the credit song it's way too good. If you couldn't tell, and I'd be very concerned if you couldn't, I didn't love playing through this game's story at all. I can't say it's straight up terrible though, more like it doesn't feel thought out as a whole. The attempt was made to have this super serious, heartbreaking story about Vincent run at the same time as him taking down this big evil organization. They have him do this in the most badass way possible while telling the saddest story. And sure, it's possible. Look at games like God of War. They just did a shitty job here. The worst part is definitely Lucrecia. I would say most of it is her fault. All of her scenes, more specifically. She's not a bad character, and a good chunk of her story with Vincent really does work, and I enjoyed it. It's just that I do think it falls flat because of how complicated and how badly it's shown to the player. It doesn't help that they constantly flip through clips of her with Vincent's father, Hojo, a young Vincent, herself, and somehow she's finding ways to talk to a present Vincent. All of this in the wrong and random order. Because of these scenes, I would assume nobody really understood the story they were trying to tell on the first playthrough. I know I definitely didn't. And I would assume that's a huge reason why people generally talk bad about this game. I'm here for Vincent. He's the reason I took a look at this game. He's the reason I went out of my way to get it. I wanted to understand him and see him be cool. Not really for this dead lady, but I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to listen because I want to learn more about him and how she connects to him. But I can't understand it. So for this video, I looked over it many times and put it all together in a way that I think is more than understandable, because we're trying to understand this game together. A younger Vincent who currently works as a Turk becomes a bodyguard for Dr. Lucrecia Crescent. Her herself is researching the theory of chaos and Omega. The two of them end up having a very strong relationship, one which seems to begin to blossom into something more, as the two of them constantly meet outside of the laboratory. This begins to come crashing down though when Vincent discovers that she was working with his father, and his passing was due to a lab accident both of them were involved in. Lucrecia has immense guilt from this situation and completely blames herself for it, and with Vincent discovering it, it causes a great deal of friction between the two of them. Vincent is completely willing to listen to her and understand why she didn't tell him, but she gives up on him and disregards him for Dr. Hojo. Lucrecia chooses Hojo and chooses to bear his child, entering the child into the Genova project for experimentation. This greatly upsets Vincent. It doesn't sound good for her at all, and so he attempts to voice his concerns, but none are heard. From that point on, he chooses to watch. He accepts it, and allows the experiments that would eventually end up creating Sephiroth continue. Years pass and Lucrecia continues to suffer from her choice, causing Vincent to stay silent for no longer, and he blows up at Dr. Hojo. Hojo, being the villain we all know he is, just shoots Vincent, leaving him for dead. But he can't let Vincent just die. He submits his injured, near-death self to endless experimentation and torture. This period in his life creates much of the Vincent we know. He grows weirdly stronger, now able to don a beast-like form. But even so, these experiments leave Vincent close to death. Eventually, Hojo gets tired of his experiment and casts him aside as a failure. But the guilt-racked Lucrecia tries to save him. Although the main goal was to save Vincent, Lucrecia couldn't help but try to prove her theory at the same time. She infuses chaos into Vincent and he survives, but he's unable to control the chaos now inside him. In an effort of hope and in a last-ditch effort, Lucrecia tries the proto-materia, and it's a success. Vincent is saved, but at what cost for her? It really does make a lot more sense now, right? At least for me, and I'd assume for a majority, it's really confusing throughout the game, to the point where it makes you almost not want to pay attention at all, like with me. In reality though, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. It's great. It's the perfect amount of tragedy I'd expect for a character like Vincent. He gets heartbroken, cucked, tortured, and wakes up with this demon inside of him and a ball in his chest now. I'd probably be walking around like Vincent too, if that was me. But still, why choose to explain Vincent in this way? Through a crazy shooter game where if I saw this box on the shelf, I'd assume it's nothing but action. But it's the action that's already a little weird, with this sappy story shoved down your throat all the time. It's just not working at all here. While scouring the internet for opinions on this game, I saw this post by Schwan on Reddit, saying, Dirge of Cerberus. It was a lot of fun and I liked it a lot. I will say that the plot can be a little bit convoluted at times, but really you just need to take it at face value. People often want to dig into the deep story behind all Final Fantasy games and there just isn't one this time. While I disagree with there not being one, I wish that was the case, and I do really agree with the rest of the post. You play Vincent, kill bad guys, because they're bad, have fun. That's pretty much how the story goes. I think that's 1000% how it should have been, and I think they're mostly correct. The game seemed to be marketed on serious action, all the music, the box, Vincent. Therefore, there shouldn't be too much of a story to dig up. And if there is, it shouldn't be this hard to understand. When I installed the game, I thought I would be getting a ton of action with a character that I really enjoy. Instead, I sat through a lot of Lucrecia dialogue, and I had to watch my comfort character get cucked. And that's all I really need to say. I actually really enjoyed the action elements, that probably being way more controversial than my opinions on the story, since the story is kind of what everybody seems to like, and it's the gameplay which they seem to really hate. And to an extent, I get it. I think that maybe I just really do have a soft spot for these older type shooter games, as they're what I grew up with. And while yes, I did eventually get very tired of the game about 9 missions in, I would blame it more so on a bunch of random factors rather than the gameplay loop in general. These factors, I would say, are really big though, making me lead to my biggest question we've all asked. Why did we sign off on a shooter game? Oh yeah, he loves these. He loves shooter games, guys. I got the biggest smile on my face. I love them too. Terrible enemy AI, terrible bosses, very repetitive level design. Just to name a few. I can't understand why the choice was made to make this game. The wiki provides another reason as well, saying it was to help with the developer's skills in developing. How a shooter game would help them develop more turn-based games, considering that's what Final Fantasy is known for. I can't answer that, I'm not a developer. In all seriousness, I actually enjoyed the gameplay. Enough to play it again, to play anymore? No, please no. But I liked it. I was having genuine fun for the most part when I was playing before I started to pick up on a lot of the bigger issues the game had. Hopping around with these insanely oversizable and weirdly customizable, even though I wish there was more weapons, was really fun. And it felt even better because I'm playing as Vincent Valentine, a character that's already a badass, and I get to mow down these waves of enemies without much care in the world. And the feeling itself heavily reminded me of those arcade shooter-like games. I hope you know what I'm talking about. Like, they're normally like Terminator based or like zombie based, but like you play them in the arcade with like the plastic gun. I hope you guys know what I'm talking about and I don't sound dumb. I probably would have kept that fairly good opinion if the bosses were any good, as that was definitely the worst part of the game by far. There's about 15 missions in the game, and there are about 10 normal bosses in those 15 missions. Normal being normal ass enemies with just more HP, nothing special, nothing new, just nothing but an enemy you fight in every single mission. It's just got a health bar. Considering there is moments where we easily could have had more intense fights with the main enemies, it not only seems super lazy, but makes me not care about any of them at all. It just really shouldn't take me 10 chapters, which is about 3/4 through the game, to feel like I have my first real boss fight. And I'm thinking Rosso, who Vincent encounters 3 times. The first 2 times could have easily been boss fights, but they're replaced with random soldier, random robot fights. It's kind of like, oh, I finally got a boss fight, but how was I not meant to be kind of bored before this? That's really all I want to say though. I don't want to go too much into the gameplay because I feel like I could be here forever if I talked about every single element that was a mistake and that just is dumb. But every single review for this game mentions the gameplay and so many of its issues. And while I do think some of them do over-exaggerate a little bit, I wouldn't go back and play it, as I've already said. And I still can't understand the decision to make a shooter game. It seems completely pointless, even if it was cool for a second, and even if it was fun for a second. I wouldn't recommend it. And if you've already played it, I'm sure you more than understand why I just wouldn't recommend it. So don't put yourself through this. Moving on. Alright, quick intermission real quick to remind you guys to show love. I guess it's supposed to help if I remind you guys to subscribe and like the video and just show support. I guess it's supposed to help. I don't know. I'm not used to doing that. But I just kind of wanted to explain. I'm on a mission to try out all the Final Fantasy games, as I've never tried them before. I'm not familiar with them at all. This video is part of that, and I'm having a lot of fun checking the games out so far. So if you're interested in any of that and you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, just do that stuff. I feel so silly saying this, but you get it. Back to the video. Enjoy. Vincent Valentine is the main focus of this game, but that doesn't mean there weren't other characters, obviously. Yuffie and Shulk were probably the biggest side cast members, I would say, but I'm not particularly super happy with either. Yuffie is okay, of course. I think it's impossible to hate Yuffie. Of course, she's still the silly and spontaneous Yuffie we know, but with her appearance, it brings along one big issue. You have to show the rest of the Final Fantasy VII cast now. And while it probably would have happened regardless if she was a big character or not, my point kind of still stands. This is Vincent's game, not theirs, and I think it's understandable to say that it should have been all together or just him. Instead of doing just that, they decided to tease the player. They all ride into Midgar and they each shout a line at Vincent at the very end. Really? You can't make them look this cool. Show me them in the coolest way, and then not give us any opportunities to see what they've been doing. As I said, it's gotta be all of them together again, or just keep it to Vincent. You can't tease me, it's not fair, dude. Then there's the other big issue Yuffie's appearance brings, being she's the only character to constantly reappear, yet she doesn't have any playable sections. The only other playable character, Kate Sith, who appears way less than Yuffie, has a playable section, even if it is a small section. It's a mess. And I don't even want to talk about Shulk. She could have easily been this really cool new character to lead right alongside Vincent, and that would have been awesome. She's got the story elements, the sad backstory that, from what we know, has tons of potential. She has a good enough reason to be connected to Vincent, and she has a really cool set of swords and design. Oh, but you didn't care at all, did you, developers? She was used the whole game to do what? Give us more Lucrecia. That's it. And, you know, from this whole video, you guys know I love those cutscenes. Shulk was such a huge missed opportunity. One which really probably could have been the best new part of this story if they just tried to make her that. Instead, all she does is reappear over and over to move Vincent along. Not really for her to have her own character. Nero and Weiss are characters I obviously recognize from the remake, and I did actually enjoy knowing what they are now. Both had pretty good boss fights, and I actually enjoyed the idea of what Weiss was as a whole. And I was actually happy fighting him in this game because unlike the remake, he wasn't Dark Souls level difficulty. And lastly, Vincent. I think this game did at least something for his character. And by something, I mean they gave him a super good reason to be edgy, depressed. I get you, Vincent, I get you now. Seriously though, I do think they made great strides to improve his overall character through his learning to be comfortable and trusting of others regardless of his issues. It's very clear that at the beginning of this game, obviously after Final Fantasy VII, he's comfortable with his comrades. He has this sense of affection towards them. He's very happy to be near them. But Dirge of Cerberus isn't about that. Here, it's him fighting against the guilt in his heart. The guilt that he feels about Lucrecia that he has yet to forgive himself for. Throughout the game, he learns, fights, and heals this guilt in his heart. And even though I've said multiple times, I don't like the way this was told at all, it's a beautiful arc. Through the chaos that Lucrecia saved him with, Vincent was able to live longer and learn so much more about himself. Regardless of everything terrible that had happened and how it seemed like everything possible had gone wrong for him, he was able to learn about himself and grow past that. And that was only due to Lucrecia. By the end of the game, he's able to come to terms with Lucrecia. And most of all, he's able to come to terms with his guilt. Absolving it all, saying,
Thank you. It was you. You were the reason I survived.
The events told through backstories in this game give Vincent a pretty good reason as to how he became the Vincent we all know. How he led himself to being stuck up in that manner, and how he led up to Final Fantasy VII. Even though in Final Fantasy VII it seemed like Vincent learned how to live again, he never really found the answers he was really looking for. And Dirge of Cerberus is looking for that answer, the answer to his guilt. I think it's such a beautiful tale, told in such a terrible way. The story given to Vincent is there. It's great. It just needed a better game. A much better game. Overall, I just wish there was a better way to experience this story, because this is just not it. As a Vincent fan, that being really the only reason I chose to play this game and make this video, I'm really mixed about this title. I think the game does perfectly capture his visual image. Super loud with metal themes and all this action, it screams that edginess that Vincent perfectly showcases. Then there's this other half, this heartfelt story that has a great deal of detail you have to keep up with, and all these backstories that are showcased in the wrong order for some reason. That part sucks. It's a story that explains Vincent perfectly as a character, and it's in a game that does the exact same. It should work, and it sounds all good. But when you actually play the game, you actually see it, it doesn't work at all. I don't think this was the proper game to explore this type of story at all. It's the wrong genre, it's the wrong gameplay, and it felt like it should have just been story or gameplay. Let's not mix them together. And while obviously it could work, they just didn't do it in a way that works. I liked the game enough, and I really liked that it did feel like it matched Vincent. But, I can still say it sucks. The gameplay is repetitive with the lack of design and not much care for a lot of the bigger elements. The story is confusing and told in fragments with not even a hint as to how they connect. Other than Vincent and Lucrecia, the characters just exist or they're used as a story device. Overall, I think the game is very meh. With everything I've shown you, and if you played it yourself, I would imagine you probably agree. I didn't have the most fun. I wholeheartedly think that it should have only been an action game that complements Vincent, and the rest should have been explored in another medium that better complements the feeling of the material. I do have one final question though, and that is, considering they've been remaking Final Fantasy VII as a whole, and they did do Crisis Core, one of the other spin-offs, should they remake this game? I say no. I definitely think it needs it, but I just don't think they should do it. I don't think they could fix this game. I think they would have to make a whole entire new game with how much is wrong here. I think the best way to do this game is just forget the game, keep the story, choose to explore it in a novel or a comic. I think that would be pretty cool. I'm gonna leave Dirge of Cerberus with a 45 out of 100. While I really don't need to reiterate my issues for the 100th time, I will happily reiterate that I hope they choose to re-explore this game in another way. Whether it's through a comic book, whether it's through like a movie, whether it's through anything, I don't think remastering this game is the right choice at all. There's much better ways you could explain Vincent's story because there is a good story here. The game that just goes along with that story is, I think, a dead idea, and it should stay dead. They shouldn't try to revive it in any way. And so that's my hope for this game. After playing it, I hope they choose to revisit this story in a way that's much better. Not with a remake nor a remaster, but a new great way to experience this story without having to go through the part that everyone wants to forget. This game would probably be all but forgotten if it just didn't have Vincent. And if it didn't take place in Final Fantasy VII. Let's just be honest. It would probably be left in the wind, never to be seen again, but it is from one of the most popular franchises ever. So that just can't really happen. I do think it should stay further away than forgotten though. Just not even keep it forgotten, just stay 500 miles minimum away from me type of forgotten. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed me suffering through this game. Regardless of how bad or good it is, it's definitely more on the bad side. I enjoyed getting to spend more time with Vincent because yet again, I was pretty upset that I couldn't play him in Rebirth. For some ending notes, I do want to mention this game got me into J-Rock and that's been really cool. So yeah, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, you know, YouTube stuff. Follow the Twitter. I'm trying to be more active on there. I'm trying to post teasers for videos, updates. And that's actually it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys all soon.